In this video, we're going to have a look at both macro-level envelope functions as well as point-level data manipulation. First, let's start with the envelopes and their purpose within the recorded timeline. Here, you'll see an average recording that we've done using our joystick, keyboard, or other input devices that has laid out some fragmented data throughout the timeline. As I scroll up and down, you'll notice these are organized into tracks and to groups and represent the recording I've done in real time. The first thing we can do is take any envelope and single click to highlight and move that envelope left or right in time. This envelope again is based initially off the recording but can be extended on the right side or on the left side of that envelope just by hovering your mouse over and click dragging to extend that envelope in time. As you'll notice, if we extend the envelope, it will automatically create the distance or tween between the next point in the timeline. If there is no data forward or reverse of that point, it will simply keep that level as its last known state. This is represented by the gray line outside of the envelope. The envelope color is simply a representation of what mode the track or group is set to. Play is green, red is record, off is gray. Note that we can also set the entire group to one of these states and have all of the envelopes within the tracks reflect that modified state. What if we wanted to join two envelopes together? For example, these two were meant to be one recording, but due to my process of stopping and starting the timeline, these ended up in two separate sections. We can do this in a number of ways. We can click on the right envelope and simply hit Merge Left. I'm going to undo that and also show you that we can click on the left envelope and, of course, Merge Right. Additionally, if we have a bunch of fragmented envelopes, most of these are only two, but let's grab one down here where we just have like an individual little blip there. We can right click and say Flatten Selected Tracks. What this actually does is flatten the entire range of the timeline out for the duration of that entire timeline value. So this is 5 minutes, and the entire 5-minute track is now set to a single flattened envelope. Why would we want to do this? Well, in many cases, once you're done completing the animation and segmenting and copying and pasting and sliding around, it can actually be more cumbersome to leave these in envelope states. The envelopes are there as a rapid tool to help you edit, move, copy, paste, and slide things around in synchronization with other elements and the distance between those envelopes. However, with the project complete, it's often better as an archive principle to just flatten the track if you don't want somebody editing or moving those things around. So you saw me actually flatten that, and then you saw me undo it to get us back to that original state. What if we open up someone's project that already has a flattened state and undo is not available? What options do we have here? Well, the simplest is that we can take the cursor, move that to a point where we want to split it, grab that track, and hit the slice tool. Now I've got all the properties I would need to go back and slice that up and create my own representations of where I want data to start, stop, end, and be able to be slid around in the timeline. So I'm going to take a few steps back here, and I'm going to actually go back to my unflattened state, which is where we started here. As far as moving a bunch of envelopes around in synchronization, for this, we normally would use the slide group mode. I'm going to select the icon, and you'll notice that all of the tracks are grayed over. Once I have this grayed out mode selected, I can now hit the Command key on my keyboard and left click a bunch of envelopes, whether they're in the media section or the data section of the timeline. They can even be on opposite tracks as you see here, and slide those around without losing that synchronization or those representations of each other against each other in time. So the only limitations I'm going to have, you'll notice if I hit an envelope on the left or I hit an envelope on the right, that's going to prevent me from going any further. This is really useful if you're trying to sneak back a mouth move, but you don't want to actually change the left or right body movements or eye movements within the character. First thing we want to do is hold down the Command key and left click to select both of those. I'm then going to hit Command C, which is going to copy those, or of course we can also go down under the Edit Copy menu. And I'm going to move my cursor down the timeline a little bit more, and I'm going to hit Control V. Notice nothing happens. That was intentional. I don't have a target track selected for those envelopes, so Showforge does not know where to paste them. If I click on the same track for arm spin, I can now paste those at the leading edge of the timeline indicator, and the data between those 2 points will be automatically ramped. Please note you can change this in certain applications in certain instances, as well as ArtNet data will default to a step mode. However, for any kind of animation data or analog track, we're going to default you to this simple ramp between points. Now, if I wanted to paste this same data on another track, all I'd have to do is go up to that track, click on that header, and paste it there. This is extremely useful, for example, if you're trying to match an inverted move where you maybe have two motors, one is negative to positive, the other is positive to negative, or you have an eye move that needs to follow or lead ahead. So I've taken us back to our saved state of the project again, because I want to look at something that's a little more typical in most applications. And that is multiple copy paste of multiple envelopes within multiple tracks, all assigned to that same character. To get to this point, what I want to do is use the command again and select any three envelopes. So this one, and this one. And of course, if I want to unselect one, with holding down that command key, I can unselect that as well. Now I've got these selected, and I'm going to hit Command C to copy those to my clipboard. As you saw earlier, if I just hit Command V, nothing's going to happen. If I select one track and hit Command V, it's only going to paste that track up at the top. If I hit, I'm going to undo that, and if I hit multiple tracks, as you would expect, I'm going to actually move this back just a little bit so you can see it. If I hit multiple tracks and hit Command V, that's going to paste those together. Now notice that both I'm going to scroll this down here a little bit. This was our paste from before, and this is our sequence here of events matching this sequence of events accordingly. Now notice that when I select multiple tracks, those multiple orientations of both vertical and horizontal hierarchy are preserved. To show you that another example, I'm going to move down the timeline a little bit more. I'm actually going to zoom out here, and I'm going to extend my play range, and I'm going to select again these multiple tracks, and I'm going to paste again. So you'll notice that those three are pasted both vertically and horizontally oriented. Now, what if I want to paste that to other tracks or paste that in some sort of asynchronous fashion? Is that possible? Just as it was with the other tracks, we can simply select any three tracks vertically within that hierarchy, move our cursor, and hit Command V. Now I've moved those three tracks in the same vertical orientation, but to different target destinations. So this is 1, 2, 3. This is now 1, 2, and 3. Again, of course, preserving that horizontal orientation. If you want to delete a single envelope, the easiest way is to left click and hit either the red X, the delete key, or to go under Edit and hit Cut or Command X. Any of these will take them off of the Showforge project, but only the Cut key will allow you to repaste it at a later location. Since the last action I took was cut, hitting Command V will move that envelope from here to here without using dragging. If I want to delete multiple envelopes, I simply follow the multiple select process, holding down the Command key and pressing either the red X, Command X, or the delete key based on the function I'm trying to achieve. Using the drawing tools inside of Showforge is by far the fastest way to create new data, as well as edit existing data without the fidelity required of point editing. Let's take a look at how we can do this within the Showforge timeline. Whether I have data existing or not, either of the draw tools can be used. I can draw a straight line, or I can draw a curved line with either my mouse, a tablet, or using Sidecar for the iPad. If I grab the straight line tool, I can create a new envelope by positioning my mouse in the timeline. You'll see the rollover percentage to start, click and hold, and then drag in any straight line orientation up or down. You must drag forward. You may not drag from the endpoints back. This is forward linear motion that you are creating, and in this case I'm going from roughly 68% to 77%, and I'm letting go. This automatically creates the envelope structure whether or not it's between envelopes, within an existing envelope, or joining an envelope left or right of where we're at. Let's take a look at that. If I want to fade from the 71% to the 0 point in this envelope, I simply click here, drag down, find my 0 point, or 1 for this case, and let go. And notice that this preserved the last point where it's jumping up here to the next envelope. Let's say I want to eliminate all of this, and in fact this new envelope I drew was not what I wanted. I can delete that envelope, I can undo, I can take all these steps backwards, but in a lot of cases it's smoother just to grab a line and draw this over. Not only is this joining the envelopes and removing that extraneous data, but it's also giving you kind of a smooth, straight fade between the two without having to jump in and grab these individual points, move them up and down, delete things, and go back and forth. So that was taking a look at the linear points. Again, it can be between envelopes, it can be used to create a new envelope, and it can also be used to completely strike an entire section of data out and make a smooth linear fade from point A to point B. But what if we wanted to actually do some curved drawing similar to like a pencil or other kind of visual tool on an iPad? What we can do is grab the similar tool here, which is the curve drawing or free drawing mode, and do the same going from left to right with, again, the rollover percentages. This can be done both in an envelope, between envelopes, and joining multiple envelopes together. This is a very quick and easy way of both smoothing out that envelope structure, eliminating any blips in your recording that you may not want, or creating new data. A lot of people, when they first connect to an animatronic, want to see a very simple sine wave, and this can be difficult to generate, or it may be something you don't want to be absolutely precise. If I just want to see a character cycling, the easy thing to do is just kind of draw a simple wave here to give me some motion that I can assign out to that character. So far, these have all been analog tracks. If I were to go in here and grab a digital output, so named as such as digital output, you'll notice that I have a high and low based on the 50% mark. Again, as we covered in earlier videos, Showforge is storing all of your data as a 16-bit analog value, regardless of the output type of the track. In this case, anything I draw above 50%, whether it's straight line or curve, is stored as that 16-bit value, but anything below 50% represents as off, anything above 50% represents as on. More commonly, unless you know you'll be switching back to analog later, most people just draw a quick dash in the off or on portions of the digital track. It is non-destructive, so if you add additional on data, it is not going to change anything other than the analog point value stored in the back. While we're going to cover point editing next, just so you can see what I've actually done here, you can see the number of digital points I've created in this track. So because I'm creating these as digital, it is actually drawing them at a 50 or 100% state. However, if I recorded that data or I used point editing, it is still stored in that 16-bit representation. Again, we're going to come back to point editing, but just to see this, I can still drag this point up or down if I have an intention of going back to an analog track. So let me grab this track again, and I'll pick something analog, and you'll notice that little hiccup there, even though the rest of these are digital. So the drawing does put it in as a 0 or 100% value based on whether you're below or above 50%, but the data again is actually as a 16-bit analog value. So if you're in a drawing or recording state, you are able to easily modify that. Okay, and just for a little comparison here, I do have a small iPad. This is not the larger size. It's one of the smaller iPad Pros, but I am using this and capturing this through Sidecar. So I'm on the iPad with a Apple Pencil, and I'm in the free draw mode. And what you can see is I'm actually writing on the screen, so it looks very similar to what's happening with the mouse, but I am actually using the Apple Pencil. And this is a really intuitive workflow for quickly touching up your data. So if you do have an iPad and an Apple Pencil, you can quickly send Showforge over to that iPad for this rapid editing. So while we are jumping into point editing next, this also does work to directly grab a point and be able to move that around, which we'll cover here momentarily. So far in this video, we've looked at macro-level envelope functions, drawing tools, and basic data manipulation within Showforge. Now we're going to look at actual point-level data manipulation. This is the most complex part of modifying data within Showforge and is generally reserved for intermediate or advanced workflows. To get into data point editing, we're going to click on this icon, and you'll see both digital and analog representations of your recording or drawn data points. This follows the workflow of most common programs in that any single point can be grabbed and moved horizontally or vertically within the timeline restraints. As you're clicking and dragging, you'll see that that level is displayed as you move it up and down. So if I'm moving it down to 10% or 19%, you'll see that value as I move that point up and down. To the left and to the right, by default, that's going to linear interpolate previous values to next values as you're seeing here. In addition, if I want to select a point, and actually type in a value, I can turn that on, type in my value, 75, and hit enter and move that down. Let's do something slightly more dramatic here. And we'll move that down to the bottom. So you've seen how to edit a single point within a recorded envelope. Now let's have a look at multiple data points and how those interact with our point editing mode. We can simply grab those points and drag them up or down, being constrained by the top of the envelope, the bottom of the envelope with this scrunch philosophy here. So it's scrunching the lowest points first, kind of flattening that curve as you drag it down, and then of course being restrained left and right by the next adjacent points. This is the most common thing used for point editing, to grab a section of data, flatten it out, smooth it out towards a ramp, or take it all the way up to the top. But you can also do things like delete those points, grab a bunch of other points, slide them left or right to give yourself a little more room, or inch that data back and forth, or simply take those points, scale them down a little bit, and modify their position and time. But what if you wanted to take a set group of points and move those to, let's say, 25%? For whatever reason, our cylinder and the figure is bottoming out, and I want to move that up to a default 25 value. I've selected these 6 or 8 points, and I'm going to go back up here in properties, and I'm going to type in 25%, well, 26%, and hit enter. Now, all of those points have been modified to reflect the 26% value, and takes us from 100 to 26 across the board, and then back up to 100. Or 80, whatever that is. And the reason we did this is because if we start going in here and deleting a bunch of random points, so let's grab these. While this doesn't really make too much of a difference in the short term, you'll notice if we delete the wrong points, this curve is going to change ever so slightly at that position in time. So I'm going to back up just a little bit here, using edit undo to give me back that original curve. However, there's no limitations to being able to grab a set number of points, drag forward and backwards with the exception of the constraints of 100, 0, the left point and the right point, and being able to modify those with the properties in the upper right hand corner. There's quite a bit more that you can do with point editing, including copy and paste. If I wanted to take this 63% level of group of points, I'm going to highlight those by either click dragging and highlighting or just leaving them selected, and I'm going to hit Command C like we've done elsewhere in the program. If I move my timeline indicator to this point in the time and hit Command V, nothing happens. Again, that's on purpose because we don't have a target track selected. If I go back and select the target track and hit Command V, still nothing happens. This is slightly different than the envelope copy and paste in that you actually have to select the envelope and the position in time. So I've selected the envelope, I put my position in time, and I can copy and paste as I go down the timeline. Anytime I hit paste, it's going to position those points in the envelope I have selected. If I want to do that to the same envelope below, I just simply click that envelope and copy and paste with the position and time that I'm selecting. I can also do this with multiple envelopes, creating a very powerful replication workflow. If I wanted all 3 of these envelopes to be able to copy and paste that same data, I just simply select all 3 and copy and paste. Let's grab something on our clipboard that's a little bit more recognizable, like this set of points here, this zigzag set of points. And I missed a point there, so let's grab that, and I'll copy and paste. And now that that's on my clipboard, let's drag back and select these 3 envelopes. And again, my position in time, if I hit paste, that's going to put that in there. Paste, it's going to put that in there. Paste, it's going to put that in there. And of course, then we can select those and move those left and right within each of those envelopes, or we can grab that macro level envelope and move the entire envelope left, right, split, or do any of the features we talked about previously. One last thing I want to revisit that we've already discussed in this video is how this looks if we convert a track to digital. At first, this may look like chaos, and this is somewhat unique to Showforge. However, what we're doing is still storing these values at the 16-bit analog level. Even though the output is sending out to a digital Weigl device, these levels are just interpreted as below 50% is off and above 50% is on. And what this allows us to do with these point editing is still select these points, move them left and right in time, move them up and down, and adjust the digital interpretation accordingly. We are not destroying that data, however, in the event that we ever need to go back to an analog track assignment. This is very useful and very powerful if you have something that may change, for example, from electric animation to digital pneumatic, and then from digital pneumatic back to electric animation. You are not losing that imported, recorded, or drawn data value within the timeline. There's certainly quite a bit more you can do with point level editing. For this video, this is where we're going to conclude. For more information, please see the video on advanced data editing, which covers things such as snapping of points, snapping to previous next markers, snapping to previous and next points, and horizontal vertical locking and zooming, as well as editing and manipulation with a keyboard between point values. The last thing I want to mention is how DMX ArtNet or streaming ACN output from a Weigl device or ArtNet device directly connected to the Showforge timeline would differ in terms of what we've talked about today. What I have here is just two universes of DMX recording that are in a single envelope. We can look at the individual channels by clicking on the envelope and selecting their channel representation in properties. However, what you'll notice is that we are not able to turn on point editing for these envelopes, even though other envelopes within the project will activate, and that drawing will have some limitations. Let's just take a brief look at that. First, we can still do all the same things we've done with envelopes for the most part. We can slide them, we can type a new value for time, we can cut them, we can trim them, and we can move them around. We can also take a drawing tool and simply take a value for the entire universe or group of channels. So if we have 1 through 6 or 1 through 7 or 1 plus 3 plus 5, whatever we have in that track assignment, this level will apply to all those channels. So it can be used for things like test or blackout or things of that nature, but really it's just designed, again, for a testing and troubleshooting type effort. Additionally, you'll notice that there is not a curve applied between the recorded data and the drawn data. There's also not a curve applied between recorded data and recorded data. The reason for this is to follow the simple lighting rules that we don't know what kind of output this is actually assigned to in the DMX world. If this was a pan or a tilt, putting some kind of fade between those two could be disastrous. We want to stay as true to the lightboard creation as possible when we're using lighting data, so you're going to actually see a reflection here more representative of a step transition. It will hold the last value by default, both at the beginning and end of the track, as well as between envelopes, but there won't be any fading or interpolation like there is on animation type data. For the most part, this is designed to just move, edit, trim, copy and paste envelope by universe or other grouping. It is not really intended for much more than editing of existing data from a lightboard or external capture. For more information, please visit weigl.support, email us at support@weiglcontrols.com, or for information regarding Showforge, info@motolab.com.